First Church, welcome to worship. We are so excited to be gathered together today online. If you are worshiping with kids, head on over to the LFC Kids Facebook group and print off the engagement page for today, and they can work on that as that goes along with the sermon. Hear the word of the Lord from 2 Corinthians. So if the old way, which has been replaced, was glorious, how much more glorious is the new, which remains forever? Since this new way gives us such confidence, we can be very bold. Because of Christ and our faith in Him, we can now come boldly and confidently into God's presence.
Not gonna wait for the walls to fall. I know a name that will bring them down, and I've got a praise waking within my soul, and I'm not ashamed to declare it now. The light of the world trembles the darkness. Nothing can stop it. You are the God of the promise. Every word will be accomplished. Nothing can stop it. You are the God of the promise. Yo! Prepare the way, the King of glory comes. Before His name, every fear must bow. And throw off your chains, Jesus destroyed them all. Up from the grave, He is with us now. Light of the world, trample the darkness. Nothing can stop it. You are the God of the promise. Every word will be accomplished. Nothing can stop it. You are the God of the promise. The gates of hell will never stand a chance. Your name prevails, Jesus the great I am. No word will fail, no weapon formed against. Your name prevails, Jesus the great I am. The gates of hell will never stand a chance. Your name prevails, Jesus the great too long on my own. I wasn't created to bear it alone. Hear your invitation to let it all go. And I see it now, laying it down, and I know that I need you. I run to the Father, I fall into grace. I'm done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, my soul needs a friend, so I'll run to the Father again and again and again and again. Oh, oh, oh. You saw my condition, had a plan from the start. Your Son for redemption, price for my heart. I don't have a context for that kind of love. Don't understand, I can't comprehend. All I know is I need you. I run to the Father, fall into grace. Done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, my soul needs a friend, so I'll run to the Father again and again and again and again. Oh, oh, again and again and again and again. Oh, 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 your sight long before my first breath, running into your arms is running to life from death. And I feel this rush deep in my chest. This mercy is calling now, just as I am. You pull me in, and I know I need you now. Run to the Father, fall into grace. I'm done with the hiding, reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, my soul needs a friend, so I'll run to the Father again and again. I run to the Father, fall into grace. Done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart found a surgeon, my soul found a friend, so I'll run to the Father again and again and again and again. Whoa, oh, again and again and again and again. Whoa, oh, again and again and again and again. You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness. You give It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness. You give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. Sing all the earth. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. All the earth. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. Your breath in our lungs, we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only.
At Table Rock Lake in Branson, there is this cliff. And if you can jump from your boat and swim 30 yards or so, it's got this little natural kind of place where you can climb up out of the water, climb up the cliff, and If you climb just a little ways, then you'll find the first section where it's safe for you to jump off the cliff and jump into the water. And it's about a 10-foot jump or so. And then from there, you kind of take a few steps up. And you can see from the picture that I've got up right now, there's like a 12-foot jump. And then there's like a 15-foot jump. And then if you keep moving up, you'll get to like this 20-foot jump off of the cliff and into Table Rock Lake. So 20 feet maybe doesn't sound like a ton, but when you're actually standing 20 feet above the water and looking down, then 20 feet feels like a lot. So when you're 3 feet tall and 3 years old, 20 feet is quite the leap. But that's what our oldest daughter, Lucy, wanted to do at 3 years old. She had watched her older cousins climb and jump. She had watched her dad and her uncle and her aunt and her mom climb and jump, and she decided it was her turn to climb and jump. So I swam out to the boat where she was sitting with her grandparents, and I swam her back to the cliff. And then as we climbed, like, I double checked with her a couple times and make sure that this is something that she really wanted to do. And really, I think I was kind of trying to talk myself into it more than I was trying to talk her out of it. Like, I didn't feel like anybody there was going to vote me Dad of the Year if they saw me like dragging my 3-year-old up this 20-foot cliff to then leap off into the water, right? So we made it to the top, and I walked her over to the lowest section, but she was not having it because we had been jumping up from the higher sections. Her family was up there. She wanted to go up where everybody else was. And so she charged past the 10-foot jump, got past the 12-foot jump, took it past the 15, and went all the way to the 20-foot jump. Now, her mommy was down in the water below, and she had a Coast Guard approved life jacket on, and I was standing right next to her, and now everyone had stopped to watch. Like, people that were there jumping, they had stopped jumping, and they had stopped moving their boats, and they had all watched because she was the tiniest person up there. So they were either there to like cheer her on, or they were there to judge me as a father. Either way, we were giving them a show. And so she marched to the edge of the cliff, turned to look at me for like one last reassuring word, which for me was like, you can do it. And then she leapt off into the lake. When you are bold, or you make bold moves or bold decisions, then you don't necessarily stop to consider safety. You don't necessarily stop to consider status. You don't even always stop to think things all the way through. You just kind of march to the edge before the boldness wears off, and you jump. And that was a very bold 3-year-old with us that day. As we continue in our Love, Shine, Live series, we're going to focus on the accompanying words with each one of those words. Love, bold, shine, bright, live, full. So let's take a look at boldness today, specifically bold love. And a story about Jesus loving bold is not that hard to find. So Jesus was motivated by love, right, in everything that he did. Jesus embodied love. Love was his first mover. Love was his MO. Love was his reason for living and for dying. 1 John 4 says, God is love. Jesus, God in flesh, did everything that he did. Every move that he made was all bold moves made in love. Love was his reason. Love is who Jesus is. So we need to keep that in mind as we read this together. So I'm going to read from Matthew chapter 12, starting in verse 9. Matthew 12:9. I'm reading from the New Living Translation. Then Jesus went over to their synagogue, where he noticed a man with a deformed hand. The Pharisees asked Jesus, does the law permit a person to work by healing on the Sabbath? They were hoping he would say yes, so they could bring charges against him. And he answered, if you had a sheep that fell into a well on the Sabbath, wouldn't you work to pull it out? Of course you would. And how much more valuable is a person than a sheep? Yes, the law permits a person to do good on the Sabbath. Then he said to the man, hold out your hand. So the man held out his hand, and it was restored just like the other one. Then the Pharisees called a meeting to plot how to kill Jesus. the word of the Lord. So the Pharisees, they've been poking at Jesus, right? They're trying to get him to slip up, or they're spending lots of time with like shocked look on their faces when he challenges things that they understand about the law, or when he makes statements about who he is. So this passage isn't really that much different in that regard. The Pharisees, they were the teachers of the law. They were the keepers of the law. The law was the religious mandate. It's the way that God had communicated with his people in the Old Testament, and it laid out, or one of the ways that he communicated with his people, and it laid out how they were to live rightly. Living by the law was attempting to live rightly before God. So when Jesus showed up and he started to break the law, at least according to them, the Pharisees, of course, were going to be completely taken aback by his methods. So now here we have a man in the synagogue, and he's got this deformed hand, and he's there on the Sabbath. And the law in Leviticus says this. This is Leviticus 23. It says, "There are 6 days when you may work, but the seventh day is a day of Sabbath rest, a day of sacred assembly. You are not to do any work wherever you live. It is a Sabbath to the Lord." So the Pharisees, they weren't wrong, but the law said what it said. You are not to do any work on the Sabbath, and they were challenging him, saying, are you going to heal this man and work on the Sabbath? But Jesus takes, in this passage, he teaches, and in the one before it too, where he talks about the Sabbath before this, that the Sabbath is not about limiting us in these ways. They've misinterpreted the spirit of the law. And Jesus notes that if they had an animal that was in danger, that they wouldn't wait until the next day to save their animal. In the same way, he was not going to wait for another day to heal this man. And then that's what he does. So that may seem like a strange passage for me to pull to talk about bold love, because it seems more like one that I would pull to talk about the Sabbath, and that would certainly be appropriate. We have a discussion about the Sabbath, or we preach a sermon series about the Sabbath, there's a very good chance we'll be back in this passage together. But here's what happens when Jesus loves bold on that day. He took on an interpretation of the law that everyone else understood. He was going to stand firm in his teaching through his actions in this new understanding of the Sabbath. And the law was not about to limit his love for the man who needed healing. And if your religion ever finds you limiting your love for others, then it's time to take a good hard look at things. And then in loving bold that day, in this particular interaction, Jesus not only took on the interpretation of the law, but he took on the interpreters. Jesus was smart. This was not the only time that the Pharisees had tried to trip him up, and it would not be the last. He knew he was not their favorite person. He knew that they were out to get him in so many ways, and he still walked into their synagogue and he healed on that day. And immediately following this, they're plotting to kill him. And choosing to love bold that day, the secret meetings that would lead to the betrayal and the murder of Jesus began. And then in loving bold that day, Jesus elevated people over the law. The law was everything for the Jews. It dictated their entire lives, how they spent their money, how they treated each other. To break the law, which is what they were saying Jesus was doing, even though he was really fulfilling the law, and he was showing us how the law is really about our relationship with God and our relationship with people. But to them, he was breaking the law right there in the synagogue, and then to do so for a person with a disability who most there would have thought that disability was there because of his or his family's sins, and so he was being rightly punished with his disability. This was all extremely scandalous. Jesus' bold love on that day was a game changer. So we learn 3 things about bold love from Jesus here. We probably learn a lot more, but I'm going to highlight 3 things that we learn about bold love from Jesus here. First one, bold love seeks no personal gain. Jesus healed a man whose life would be forever changed, and it's a story that he was going to tell to everyone he would meet. And in doing this, Jesus' cause was furthered, but his personal life was about to get harder and harder. Bold love is not for personal gain. Bold love seeks no social status. That's the second one I want to highlight. Bold love is not about social status. This was not a popularity contest for Jesus, because honestly, as far as the Jewish culture went, the Pharisees were the cool kids, and Jesus just got disinvited from sitting at their table. Third one to highlight, bold love seeks no personal safety. The plot to kill Jesus was awakened on that day. His death was imminent. He knew it. This interaction of healing on the Sabbath, healing out of love, because everything he did flowed out of his love for people, was going to bring violence his way. And he did it anyway. Bold love seeks no personal safety. Bold love may not be pretty, and it may not be popular. It could even be illegal. You know, Christianity is illegal in several countries, and unpopular in many more. In North Korea, for example, Christianity receives very little tolerance from the government down. However, there are over 300,000 Christians in North Korea. Afghanistan, same kind of thing. Christianity is met with societal and governmental intolerance. There are still thousands of Christians in Afghanistan. In Somalia, there are no Christian buildings, no gathering places, no churches. Being a Christian is enough to get you beheaded. And on top of all that, there are literally only a couple hundred Christians in an entire country of over 11 million people. Christian festivals are prohibited by the government. Honestly, Somalia may be the hardest place in the entire world to be a Christian. So spreading the love of Jesus in the simplest ways in an environment like that becomes stalwart boldness every single day. Being a Christian is bold in and of itself when you live in a place like that. Loving bold is Christianity 101. So here in the U.S., where 70% of the population identify in some way with Christianity, acts of love and just kind of the normal everyday way that Christians treat each other and everything, they may not come across as bold. Bold might not be the way that we describe these things. But we should be seeking opportunities to spread the love of Jesus in literally every situation in life. We may not be healing people, and we may not be breaking all the rules, and we may not be standing against an intolerant government, but we can love bold even in the little things. We should be seeking opportunities to blow people's minds with Jesus' love. And again, like I mentioned a couple weeks ago, I'm not talking about grand gestures here. I am talking about little things that may be entirely unexpected, opportunities to show love when love is the last thing on someone's mind. And there are going to be lots of those. And that's when love gets bold. And why? Why love bold? Well, according to John Wesley, an important theologian and a developer of the history and of our history and theology in our church, he says humanity is the great conduit, the chosen vehicle of God's blessings. The grace of God often wears a human face. You want people to see God's love. It's going to be through you, and it's going to be through other Christians that they meet. You are the messenger of love. And now is the time to love bold. I kind of wore my brain out working on this sermon, just trying to find like the right story, like the right scenario to really help illustrate this point. So if I can give you a little glimpse into sermonizing, when it's like when you find that perfect real life story that goes along with the biblical passage in some way, like they cross over in this like perfect sweet spot, you know? So always preachers are kind of always just kind of keeping their ears open and thinking about our own lives through the lens of the biblical passages that we're studying and reading. And I was just trying to think of a personal story of bold love. You know, love in the face of danger, love in the face of the loss of life or in the loss of social status. Bold love. I wanted this big, awesome story. And I prayed about it. I was like, Lord, lead me to the right narrative that will craft a compelling message for everyone who hears it. And then it hit me, or then he hit me. If I found these grand gestures of love, these perfect stories, it may sound nice and it may hammer home the point, but how relatable is it going to be? Because how often are these opportunities in front of us? I mean, how many opportunities do you have to defy the authorities with overwhelming love? That's not what bold love always looks like. Bold can't become a word that is just like unachievable in our daily walk with Jesus. No, bold love is something that we can live into more often than maybe we realize. Bold love is when my grandma died, and the entire staff with whom I was serving at the time came to the funeral. And the funeral was hours away. And this was a lady that they did not know. And they were really busy people. They had lots going on. They had lots of meetings and other responsibilities, even things outside of the church. They were involved in different projects going on around the city. But they put everything on hold to drive for hours and hours and then sit through an unfamiliar funeral and then drive home for hours and hours again, all and basically miss out on an entire day. And this was pre-smartphone, by the way, so it's not like they could sit and get work done in the car. And they did it all so they could stand in a receiving line for like 90 seconds and give my family some hugs. But that was it. They set aside their entire agendas. They sacrificed a whole day to boldly love my family. Bold love seeks no personal gain. Bold love looks like the field trip that I was on with Lucy when she was in 3rd grade. And I watched as the kids split into different activities throughout the day on this field trip. And there was this girl in her class that had some special needs. She didn't talk the way that the rest of the kids talked. She didn't relate necessarily with all of the other kids. She didn't tell jokes and she didn't laugh at the same things that all of the other kids did. But every time they partnered up, she would like look around the room and she would seek out Lucy and she would try to find Lucy, and she wanted to be her partner. And I watched that day as every single time Lucy told her yes. Instead of grouping up with her other friends, or instead of just doing it once just to be nice, Lucy spent the whole day partnering up with this other girl. And I watched Jesus show up in that field trip that day through my kid. Because bold love seeks no social status. Bold love looks like my family moving to Lawrence in a massive snowstorm. We pulled into our new driveway after coming through this blizzard to see a house full of people from the church ready to move us in. And seriously, we all should have been staying at home. No one was supposed to be out in that mess. They were saying it on the radio, they were saying it on the TV, stay home, Don't try to get out in this. Do not have a fleet of moving trucks and pickup trucks slipping and sliding down K10. This is not a good idea. But when we arrived, there they all were, ready to carry wet boxes down a snowy ramp and then drive themselves home in a blizzard, because bold love seeks no personal safety. You're going to have opportunities to love bold this very week, to put aside your personal gain, to put aside your social status, and maybe even to put aside your own safety for someone who needs to know God's love through you. So let's ask God to prepare us, to make us aware of these opportunities. Get ready, Lawrence First Church, to love big, and to love well, and to love long, to love like Jesus, to love bold. May it be so. Thanks so much for everybody for being with us in worship today. Now I am here with a couple pastors' kids. Lucy, give us a wave. And Mason, give us a wave. And Eli, give us a wave, so we all know that we are here. And they're going to help me with the announcements today, okay? But we're all looking a little scrubby because we're just sitting around our house. So tell you what, let's get a little more dressed up for the occasion, shall we? Hang on just a second. I think I've got a trick for that. Oh, okay. Much, much better. You guys look great. Okay, now we are going to just get through the announcements together. And I believe I'm going to have, who's talking about the cookbook? Eli? All right. Take it away.
We hope you've been deciding on our favorite recipes because they're due tomorrow. Desserts, sides, main dishes. If you like it, we like it. But we can't put it in our own new cookbook if you don't send it in. So go straight from where you're sitting right now to your pantry and send us 2 or 3 of your favorite recipes. You have 1 day.
That's the cookbook. That's good stuff. And are you guys going to send in any recipes? Do you guys cook at your house?
I don't.
You do not cook. You cook some. Lucy, do you cook?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe you guys should go pick a recipe after this to send in, or tell your moms or your dads to send the recipe in.
I make really good scrambled eggs, at least my sister says.
Yes, a recipe for scrambled eggs would be most welcome. Okay. Mason, what's next for us, bud?
Online giving. At church, we worship through song, through hearing the word, through serving others, through receiving communion, through teaching, through relationships with other Christians, and through giving. You can give through our website at lawrencefirst.org/give online, through an app we use called Tidely, or you can send it in the mail to the church office.
Excellent. Okay. And we have, I believe, one more thing we need to talk about. Lucy, take it away.
Reopening. We've been paying very close attention to what our governor and Douglas County have been saying about groups being together. We think we've got a plan to get to see each other's faces again soon. Stay tuned this week for our Facebook page and your email for reopening plan. We're calling Operation Boomerang because you're coming back.
Very good, guys. Okay, last thing we're going to do together is we're going to send everyone with a blessing, okay? So everybody at home, blessings on you as you go out into the world and love bold out in the world, out into your house maybe, or out into the world wearing a mask. But either way, loving bold. And then I want you guys to help me with this part. So we're going to bless everybody by putting our hands out like this. Okay, this is how we kind of posture ourselves, and hopefully everybody at home is doing this to receive the blessing. And we're putting our hands out like this, and we're going to say, go in peace on 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Go in peace.